whistleblowing journalist, soccer mom that's threatening the deep state, and now has more revelations on how all of your favorite lefty YouTubers have been targeted. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Suzie Dawson.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Graham.
How you doing?
Good, thank you. Sorry I'm late, and I appreciate everybody waiting for me. That was cool of you.
It's all right. I know you've been writing furiously, so I was like, I bet you she hasn't slept much in the last couple of days. And so I figured you might have just been like just.
It was a super intense week, that's for sure. Hi, Melissa.
Yeah. So it's great to have you here. I just want to check something real quick with my sound. There we go. Okay. Let me make sure I got this all correct here.
What I'd really like to know is who has had a chance to see the first WL Dragnet piece that we published this week. What did you think of it? What questions have you got about it? It's a pretty intensive piece of writing. I think it's about 7,500 words. It's actually just the first revelations out of this series of documents that we've obtained. So to give you some background, Talk Collaboration is a publication sponsored by Panquake.com. It is the publishing arm of Panquake. We cover big tech, internet freedom, privacy, law, surveillance, security, all of that type of good stuff. Really wanting to keep our community and our audience up to date with everything that's happening and these topics of interest that relate to why we're making Panquake and why we need Panquake. And also to educate ourselves and to make sure that we are also up to the play on these issues. So we've been releasing video and article content every single week for about three or 4 months now. And we also publish in several different languages, in Spanish and Portuguese, French and German, as well as English. So definitely check it out and subscribe if you haven't. You can subscribe for free, or if you want to support the amazing staff that are working on to produce this content, you can also choose a paid subscription option that's at talkcollaboration.com. I will type it into the chat. I hope chat lets me put links in. I think it will.
Yeah. You can put a link into the chat, and Kate can, our moderator, can put it up there. So I really, for anyone out there, if you haven't, please go to read the WL Dragnet piece that Suzie has just put out there, and it'll be the first of many because it's pretty in depth and really spells out things that we all sort of knew, suspected, but it really confirms it, and then also goes into further detail how they go about it. Really, it's their operating manual. And so I wanted to, I urge everybody to read it if they haven't already. But I wanted to talk to you, before we get into the specifics of it, is how did you get a hold of these documents? Because these aren't they're not hacked or leaked. They're just on the internet, and they're literally internal memos. They're Air Force documents. I mean, they're very, very clear what they are.
Absolutely. So we got sent one document a couple of months ago from someone who had stumbled across it on the internet. And that document, at first when we looked at it, we tried to consider all possible sides for how this document could come about. It could be produced. We thought maybe this could just be produced by a WikiLeaks supporter or an academic or an enthusiast or someone who just really wants to closely follow the entire WikiLeaks support network, because that's what this document was. It was a map of all of the supporters of Julian Assange and WikiLeaks globally at the exact time that he was kicked out of the Ecuadorian embassy. So the document itself was actually generated within 6 minutes of Julian being expelled from the Ecuadorian embassy. And it was a social network map. So it was showing people who were talking about various keywords or on specific hashtags, or were engaging in conversation with each other about Julian's situation. And then the graph itself was comprised of 60 different subgraphs, and each of those subgraphs were targeted at specific geographic regions and their support for Julian in those geographic regions, and it was in multiple languages. Like it had press freedom related keywords or social movement keywords in countries all around the world, countries all across Western Europe, countries in Asia and Central Asia, even China. They were even tracking support for Julian in China, which was, a bit of an anomaly. How, like, what regular person would know what the native language keywords are for press freedom in all of these foreign countries? Like, it's very unusual. And then we saw there was lots of attempts to tie WikiLeaks to Brexit in the UK, or to tie them to Donald Trump in the US, or different political angles in the social network map. So it was pretty clear that there was some political agendas in there, as well as a really intensive understanding of how to surveil areas of support for Julian all around the world. So that document was super interesting, and we realized it was like a really sophisticated, very sophisticated undertaking by someone who was very closely monitoring the movement to support Julian. Also, we noticed that they didn't just search on like hashtag Assange, but they searched on all different hashtags that were related to efforts to support Julian across the years. And when they input those hashtags, they did them in perfect chronological order. Like, for example, they were tracking Unity for J, which was my movement to support Julian in 2018. But they're also tracking Protect Julian. Protect Julian was a hashtag we launched prior to Unity for J, and it morphed into Unity for J. And every time that they input Unity for J, immediately before it, they input Protect Julian. So you see hashtag Protect Julian, hashtag Unity for J. Hashtag Protect Julian, hashtag Unity for J. Like, to even know that Protect Julian was the immediate predecessor to Unity for J shows like a level of awareness and monitoring that is kind of out of the ordinary. So that document was very fascinating and significant. And so our team, and particularly Sean O'Brien, my co-author from Yale Law School, you see the Yale Law School Cybersecurity High and the Privacy Lab at Yale Law School. Sean did an absolutely amazing job of research on this project. And we were able to track down, I think we've got 1,365 documents that all came from that first one document that we were able to dig up. And those documents showed persistent, what we would describe as event-driven surveillance of the movement to support Julian and WikiLeaks. So just as the first document was based around the precise day and time that Julian was kicked out of the embassy, other documents are based around basically any time that there is a major development in Julian's case, like when Suzie Dawson recently recanted his testimony, boom, social network map. So anytime something happens that's interesting, these people are instantly profiling who is talking about it, who's engaging in a conversation.
It's really, I mean, I remember April of 2019 when he was thrown out of the Ecuadorian embassy. I think Ron Placone and I were on the road, and we were just like, what is going on? And we were all tweeting about it, and to know that we were being like put on a list, and it's just kind of staggering to me, in a sense that, like, comedians, I remember Ron and I talking, I'd be like, I know I'm not on the top of anyone's list, but I know I'm on a list, and this just confirmed it. Like, I knew the stuff I talk about on this show and what I put on social media puts me on a list. And so it's really, in the one hand, it's sort of like, I mean, when you were showing Jimmy and I documents, Jimmy Dore, I mean, I was joking with Jimmy. I said, Jimmy, when we did this bar gig back in the 90s in Wisconsin, did you think we'd be on a private intelligence list? And no, but it's kind of, we're in crazy times. And it's good you guys came up with this, or found this information, especially leading up to we'll talk about Julian's trial in a little bit, but the last 2 days, where they wouldn't even let him in the courtroom, even though that's his right. So I wanted to go one of the things too you uncovered is how afraid they are of someone who they call a bridge, who bridges separate groups, and why then, like Jimmy was doing that with Force the Vote, and why Force the Vote just seems so like unnaturally became this caustic fighting thing. And you have documents to show that, oh, he was targeted, and they deliberately divide and conquer, and they use, I mean, their tactics, how they were used. I mean, Jimmy was targeted because he tried to bridge gaps. It's like when Jimmy goes on Tucker Carlson, he is smeared, and some people are just people that are pissed off and don't get it. But that stuff we're seeing in these documents and in your reporting, that they fuel that on social media, this sort of, digital witch hunt with their troll farms to then stir up like, oh, Jimmy's a fan of Nazis because he interviewed a Boogaloo Boy, or he loves Tucker Carlson, so he hates, whatever, immigrants or whatever they're going to try to throw around his neck, when he's just trying to like bridge the gap of like getting literally on the air live. He got Tucker Carlson to see Jimmy's argument on why Assange should be freed. I mean, that's what they don't want. They want us in our little camps. They want us to be team Fox or team MSNBC or red state, blue state, or team vaccine or team ivermectin or whatever. They want us on these teams fighting with each other. So go into what you've uncovered, how they target people that form bridges.
Okay, so the what of the publishing is the 1,365 documents, these social network maps, which I was just explaining about. And then we get into the who's generating these maps, who's behind this. Because like I said, at first we thought maybe it's just some supporters, maybe it's academics, maybe it's just casual observers. But it's clear that it's not. It's highly sophisticated professional people. And when we got into the who is behind these, we discovered these maps are generated by a technology called NodeXL. The chief evangelist and promoter of that technology is a guy called Mark Smith. Mark Smith is connected to several entities which appear to be very strongly connected to US intelligence, US government. So, for example, NodeXL was originally pushed by a company called Morningside Analytica, which was rebranded, got $8 million of funding, and became a company called Graphica. Graphica is one of the major sources for Russiagate congressional testimony. They have a director who is a 30-year veteran of the CIA. He's not just a veteran, he was actually an executive at the CIA and is now an executive at Graphica. Mark Smith and NodeXL have a for-profit contracting arm called Connected Action that uses NodeXL to run reports, including periodic automated batch reports for the 5 biggest US defense contractors: Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, et cetera, et cetera. So this is very much all tied into the same network of people who have been targeting Julian Assange and WikiLeaks. And these are the people who are so interested in the support network for Julian Assange and for WikiLeaks. But not only that, they've also been running reports on who talks about Raytheon. We just dug up a document yesterday where Lee Kemp is centrally targeted in that document for his work around issues relating to Raytheon. And a whole host of others. And as you mentioned, we've found a number of documents with Jimmy Dore in them. We found documents with Jimmy Dore's wife, Steph Zamorano, also in them. And we found, I believe, 24 documents that refer to you by name as well, where they're tracking your conversations, etc. So once we worked out the who is behind this, then we tried to get into the why, like why are they doing this? And so we started watching many videos of their online presentations, which you can as well. If you go to YouTube and you type Mark Smith with a C and NodeXL, you can actually sit there and watch these presentations about what they're doing and why they're doing it, because they're actually pretty forthright about it. So what they say is that the internet is a marketplace of ideas that is unregulated, and that those ideas need to be accounted for, and that people need to be accountable for what they say online. And in order for them to be accountable, there needs to be accountants. And they say that they are the self-appointed social accountants of the internet, and that NodeXL is their accounting software. They say that they want to be the social and cultural auditors. This is the word they use, of the internet. They want to audit our opinions, our speech, our ideas, who we talk to, what we say, and then they produce these auditing reports. And then they explain, oh, cool, thank you, Turkey Day. Turkey Day just said they just subscribed to Talk Liberation. I really appreciate that. Thank you. We've worked so hard on it. And then they say what they're attempting to do, what they're wanting to do, is a 3-step process. First of all, they want to detect. And that is what this NodeXL software is doing, is detecting who is in support of Julian, what are they saying about Julian, who else are they talking to about Julian, etc., etc. Someone's saying, WTF, exactly. Do you feel like you need the internet to have accountants that are connected to US defense contractors and the CIA? I certainly don't feel that I need that at all. In fact, I think it's pretty unconscionable. So anyways, step 1 is detect us who are having conversations that should, I might add, be protected democratic speech. These are our political opinions. Under international law, under Bill of Rights, this is protected speech. We should not be detected for engaging in it. Then the second step in their little process is deflect. So this is where they want to change the course of the conversation we're having. This is where they want to intervene in it and to deflect us away from the topic or the subject matter opinions. Lisa Lightning says they just want dollars. You're right. There is a huge element of ka-ching involved in everything that I'm discussing. These people are making megabucks doing this. Absolutely.
Megabucks from the United States.
Megabucks from private sector corporations. I mean, you know, how much does Raytheon pay per month for reputation management via NodeXL? I mean, that's a really great question. I can't answer it yet, but I can tell you that if you want to talk to Mark Smith, you can book an hour of his time for $350 US. So, you know, he's not coming cheap. You can get a single automated report from NodeXL for $80 US. You know, you give them your keywords and they press a button and ka-ching, $80. So step 3 is probably the most deranged and scary of all. Step 3, they say, is deter. And for deter, they have literally a picture of a sword on the screen. So they want to detect you, deflect you, and deter you. And I don't know if you're cool with me reading some quotes from this guy about his deterrence plans, but he talks about things like the weaponization of social media. That there should be they should use social media as like a counteraction. Let me give you his exact words because really I can't trump the stuff that he says about deterrence. Bear with me. I'll just look it up. Here we go. Smith explains there are 3 things necessary to essentially domesticate information networks, and that is detection, deflection, and deterrence. Detection is when you know you're under attack. Deflection is what you do as a result. And deterrence is where you have a reaction so severe that people don't bother to attack you in the first place. Oh my God. And it just gets better and better. There's a direct quote from Mark Smith. If I tell you you are being attacked right now, what do you do about it? Then what? Then, of course, deterrence is the idea that if Mr. Putin is sitting there going, hey, we're going to mess up American politics more, we say, would you like to see Mr. Navalny become a cult leader? We can make that happen. Maybe you would like to back down then, because in the same way we have mutually assured destruction on the nuclear weapons front, we would have some kind of mutually assured destruction on the social media epistemological battlefront. So this is how these people behind NodeXL see social media. They see it as a battlefront. They talk about it as the battlefront, as the battle space. And that's exactly the same type of language that we hear coming out of US Cyber Command, US government, Department of Defense, Pentagon, etc. And there is another whole dimension that relates directly to those entities in our subsequent reporting that's coming out in the new week. So stay tuned because it gets a lot more sinister than just Mark Smith and NodeXL. But this is what they want to do. They want to be the little social media police force of all of us, and then they want to deter with a picture of a sword anyone from saying things that they don't want us talking about. I haven't forgotten your question about the bridge, so I'll quickly answer it.
Okay.
In our reporting, this is explained as well. Mark Smith talks about how any viral hashtag has only 1% of people at its center. So what these Node Excel lists are doing, that your name's on, that Jimmy's name's on, that my name's on, I mean, I'm named 6 times just in one document, and particularly the embassy expulsion graph. What they're doing is they're trying to weed out the 99% who are just amplifying content and get to the 1% who are generating and driving content, so that they can then target and deflect and deter that 1%. And these are their words. They say they're going after the 1% that are at the center of any conversation or any topic. So they can detect and deflect and deter us from being able to do that. But it is very true that what we see in these lists is in the top 10 lists, you'll have like big influencer accounts like WikiLeaks with 5 million people. Then you'll have someone like a WikiLeaks activist humanity who has 500 followers. And you think, how can it be that, you know, I'll use her as an example, I know she won't mind. She's a single mum from the suburbs in Aussie. She's putting herself through school while she raises her kids. She is not connected to any group, not paid by any group. She is just a person of conscience who cared about what was happening to Julian and who spoke up about it. And she has been reporting having significantly adverse experiences in her real life as a direct result of her activities on social media. And how someone like her is listed next to someone like WikiLeaks is because, according to Mark Smith and Node Excel, these low follower accounts that appear on these lists are what they call bridges. So a bridge is, they call the influencers a hub because they have a lot of connections. Like Jimmy Dore is a hub. He has an enormous amount of connections, but he can also be a bridge if he spans multiple different social groups and micro communities who are then connected to each other through him. And so what they talk about is how breaking the bridges, getting rid of the bridges, burning the bridges, separates out those communities and keeps them separate from each other. So exactly as you explained, Graham, they want to keep us all separate in our little siloed groups. And anyone who is bridging those communities and thereby making the whole community much larger are actually more dangerous from the perspective of the people doing the targeting than a hub that has a very closed, even if large, closed social circle.
Yeah, I really mean that makes sense, because I mean, it really, I mean, this is historically what they've always done. I mean, now this is just the digital modern version of, I mean, I've talked about this numerous times on my show. Anytime somebody unites, the threat. Like, I mean, when Malcolm X and Dr. King were at odds with each other, they loved it. Great. The Black community's divided. But when Malcolm X and Dr. King started to see eye to eye, well, they had to take them out. You know, when Malcolm X, you know, was like reaching out, they took him out. You know, when he's reaching out to Dr. King, they took him out. When Dr. King started talking about not just poor Black people, poor white people, when he started giving speeches that focused on socialism and guaranteed base, you know, UBI, and being critical of the Vietnam War, they took him out. When Bobby Kennedy was talking about the poverty of all the different ethnic groups in America that were suffering from severe poverty, and he was anti-war, they took him out. They took him out the old school way of, like, you know, bullets. They don't let him. So now, and we've seen now, they will never even let somebody like those guys they will never even let them get that close. I mean, Bernie Sanders is a fine example of, like, he got kind of close, but we really see how he was just like the perfect sheepdog to rally everybody together, give them the money. Oh, the revolution, Bernie revolution. And then he just stops. And now everybody's fighting the whole left is fractured and fighting with each other. You see, wow, he was very, very effective at that. And you see what social media is now this. So they'll never let somebody, I mean, you know, Jeremy Corbyn in the UK, they're just never going to let somebody like that has populist, progressive platforms that would unify, because that's the other thing too. I mean, when you see these folks that are huge bridges. You know, like after Bernie lost in 2016, he did this town hall in West Virginia, this very red, working class, white, you know, Trump supporter group. All were like, man, this guy's on my side. He's fighting for me and my rights and my kids. And so we got to get rid of that. They need to keep us divided, distracted, and afraid. That is, and you just confirmed it with all of this. Because if you bridge gaps, and that was the thing when you and I met, you were doing Unity for Jay, and it was like, I remember being on there with like, you know, Ray McGovern, and then what was it? I think Cassandra Fairbanks, you know, just she's a Trump supporter. She's but we all agreed on press freedom. We all agreed on what they were doing to Julian Assange was wrong, which you can see why the Julian Assange, you know, WikiLeaks press freedom movement is such a threat, and why you've seen so many clear, like, people that have been deliberate infiltrators. They sound like they're big Julian advocates, and they get in there and fucking fight with everybody and stir up shit. And you're just like, I wonder who's paying them. And I'd be curious to know all of the big pro Assange people that aren't listed in any of these documents. That might be like, oh, that's curious that this person that's always sort of in the middle of some sort of fight is not listed by these groups that have been targeting us. So I wanted to ask you this question, since thank you for showing why the bridge is a threat and why this is important. And I want my audience to really understand this, because why this work is important. We see how their tactics work, right? So you saw that it was clearly there was outside forces dividing the force to vote to blow that up, right? We've seen, you know, and the vaccine and COVID, I'm sure just is a very personal thing for a lot of people. So, but there's no way they're not in there stirring that up somehow. I mean, I find it hard to believe they're not, because when I was getting attacked for just posting on Twitter that performers have the right to feel safe on stage, and you were like, Graham, you're being targeted. Like, you just said it flat out. You said, I can tell you're being targeted. But I wanted to ask, is there anything in these documents that could potentially give somebody a case in court? Like, is there any laws that they have clearly broken, that there's now documentation that someone could get a lawyer and go, they've targeted me, they've slandered me, they've smeared me, they've hurt my ability to make money? Because if I could sue these godless fucks, I would. Or just, you know, get a team of people to find out where they live and just fucking hassle them morning, noon, and night. Just like drop water balloons on them and shit like that. So I don't know. Have you uncovered anything in here? I know you're not a lawyer, but I know.
Exactly. I hate to say it, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm certainly, I have no specialist knowledge of US law whatsoever. I know that there are a lot of very unhappy people now who found themselves on these lists and are starting to understand the scale of the monitoring operations that they've been subjected to, who have a lot of questions now, including whether there should be some type of class action lawsuit, or whether they should be filing FOIA requests or trying to get more information about who are the paying clients behind the generations of these lists. That's a really good question for a start, because NodeXL itself is just a technology. Anyone can use it. You and I can go to NodeXL and type in 10 different species of cats and run a report on, you know, who's talking about Siamese cats today, or whatever, French poodles. And that would be a benign and harmless application of NodeXL. But when you go into NodeXL and you use it to track activist communities, there's a lot of, for example, Medicare for All is targeted in NodeXL. When you use NodeXL as a tool to profile activists and even just regular citizens who are talking about sharing their political opinions, when you use it for the purpose of surveillance or as a tool for mass surveillance, and where it's not just passive surveillance, but where you're then taking real world and online actions as a result of the knowledge gained by that surveillance, then that's another question. That's a different motive. It's a different use case than just using it for academic study, or using it for, you know, because you're interested in some topic. When it is coordinated intensive targeting that is part of a targeting process, I would think that that's a bit more sinister. Yeah, and as regards to force of the vote, you're absolutely correct. Force of the vote is all the way through these documents as well. And they absolutely did hate Jimmy for what he was doing there. Anyone who steps outside of the narratives that are accepted is going to be targeted one way or another. And these documents are very insightful. They're worth really looking through to understand how pervasive this is. They're running these things at a whim on the regular, and they're doing it while apparently to serve the interests of some really, really sinister networks. Just back to their ideology and the things they say, there's another little part here that I wanted to point out. Mark Smith, yet again, says, we don't want to be leaving the castle gate open when the enemy is at the gates. We need to find a balance somewhere that does penalize low quality and dangerous speech while enabling the diversity of speech that we want. So it is the case that social media makes a promise that all may speak, but it does not make a promise that all may be heard. And this is where he's alluding to the shutting down of people's ability to speak and to communicate. Because under the guise of them being an enemy at the gates on social media. And the problem is, even with them silencing us, shadow banning us, arbitrarily suspending our accounts, denying our right to be heard, as Mark Smith mentions there, we are always heard. We are always heard whether or not we're shadow banned because we are spied upon. We're spied upon by the devices and networks and technology that we use to communicate 24/7. And so the state is on one side of things, making sure we are always heard. We are heard in our cars, in our houses, in our personal private conversations. We are heard, our literally everything we say and think is being heard by the government. But what they are doing is simultaneously restricting our ability for other people to hear us. So they're breaking our communications channels with each other, silencing us, and at the same time making sure that the government, the security agencies, the corporations, they can hear everything. Sorry, I know it's so dark, but it's just the factual situation we all find ourselves in, these days.
And it's so psychotic. I mean, they're sociopaths. They're sociopaths. The world is run. The people in power are sociopaths. They're awful, sadistic, soulless, rat fuck, like maggot-ridden shitheads, and they shouldn't be allowed to procreate.
They also constantly contradict themselves. Like in another one of Mark Smith's quotes, he says, this is where he's carrying on about them becoming cultural auditors and cultural accountants. He says that they are the ones who can tell us if a hashtag's growth is authentic. He says, are these ideas actually, as they claim, a reflection of a majority's opinion, or are these in fact the amplified opinions of a minority? And so in democracy, we need to be able to accurately assess the opinions of our fellow citizens. So it's interesting because just a moment ago in the prior quote that I read, he's saying, of course we want to respect diversity. But here he's saying outright that the opinions of the minority are not welcome, and that if you're not conforming with the opinions of the majority, then you should be deflected and deterred.
Jesus. Wow.
I guess the much more sinister element to this that we should recognize is we went and started talking to people who are named in these lists because we wanted to know what is happening to people who are named in these lists. What are their experiences? And that is where probably the most significant findings in this reporting are. 100% of the people who we interviewed, who were listed in these targeting lists, have experienced mobbing by coordinated troll networks online. I think it was 60% of them have had smear blog posts written about them on dodgy websites, trying to destroy their reputation. A percentage of them had, I think 40% of them have had what the NSA would call CNA, computer network attacks, have had intrusions, network intrusions, device intrusions, the devices being hacked or compromised. And also a pretty large percentage of them had experienced real-world surveillance, like surveillance on the streets, being followed around, one person described being photographed from a car, from vehicles. Another person, I actually didn't make it into the reporting yet, another person, their mother found a woman going through their garbage with a notepad and writing down everything that was in their trash. So it's very clear that there is a tie between the online targeting and real world targeting, and that it does cross that barrier from cyber and social realm into the real world.
Yeah, because I mean, I personally, you listed these things, like, have any of these things happened to you? I'm like, yes, I've been, smeared. I've been targeted. I've been, I was talking about it before you came on the show. I was at 78,000 YouTube subscribers. They've demonetized me. I haven't been able to make a penny from YouTube for the last 8 months. So they're really trying to hurt my ability to do this show, because this is how I make my living. And they have throttled my numbers. Now I'm like 77,000. Like, people are unsubscribing to me. My Twitter has been stuck at 32,000 followers for like years now. And it's funny, like Rockfin, which is blockchain cryptocurrency platform and totally outside of big tech, I got 40,000. I went from about 15,000 followers in February to now 40,000. Like, those numbers over there aren't being stopped because they don't have control over that. And so you really see, I personally have been throttled and attacked. I've had copyright strikes for bizarre, like a video from a year ago. They have done this numerous times, and they've really tried to hurt my ability to make a living, and which encourages self-censorship, right? So like, oh, don't talk about that. And I know YouTubers, when all the demonetization started rolling after the January 6th, insurrection at the Capitol, I was like, they're coming for us. And then I talked to some YouTube friends, like, well, I guess I'm not going to talk about this or that. I'm like, yeah, you're self-censoring, which is another victory for the deep state. I mean, really, because they know they don't want you to talk about this and that. And specifically, when you talked to me, you said, Graham, we were on a phone call, and I said, am I mentioned? And then like Sean, like, just did it in real time. And I mentioned in 24 documents, which is like, how specifically am I mentioned?
So I think Sean actually sent you through a couple of documents. I don't know. Does your streaming software allow you to screen share?
Yes.
Do you have the documents that he sent through to you?
He emailed those to me.
Yeah, I mean, I have them here locally on my. There's a share button.
Yeah, you can share. You can share from your end.
So let's have a look. This is one that he just sent through. Share screen. Share screen.
Hey everybody, my name's Graham Elwood, this political vigilante. I'm here with Suzie Dawson, who has a very big article that just came out about the WL Dragnet, and we're going to go over the documents where yours truly has been targeted. So I've hosted game shows, I'm a stand-up comic, a surfer, and a vegan, and I'm a threat to the security of America, apparently.
Okay, so this document that we're looking at right now is all about Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, Brooklyn College, Campaign, Revolution, Begin, Bernie Brooklyn, People for Bernie, Bernie Sanders, Bernie 2020, Feel the Burn. So they have here all of these different groupings of keywords into these separate graphs. So this one looks like it has somewhere around 30 graphs. So it's about half the size of that WikiLeaks one was. And when we look here, it's been generated by Connected Action. Connected Action is the for-profit analysis arm of Mark Smith from NodeXL. So Social Media Research Foundation is his nonprofit, and Connected Action is his for-profit. So this is where somebody is paying to get this report prepared. And they have supplied a word list.
And just so the audience is clear here, again, I want everyone to be clear here. These are documents that you found on the internet. You didn't make these up.
Absolutely, they're not hacked. We didn't produce them ourselves. These have been produced by NodeXL, which is this technology that I've been talking about and talking about the people who are behind this technology. And this particular report is from Connected Action NodeXL. Connected Action is the for-profit contracting arm of it's the for-profit side of Mark Smith's Social Media Research Foundation, which is a non-profit. Okay, so this graph represents a network of 2,000 users whose recent tweets contained Bernie in Brooklyn, or who were replied to or mentioned in tweets mentioning that hashtag, taking from a data set limited to a maximum of 18,000 tweets. This network was obtained from Twitter on Saturday, 2nd of March 2019 at 5:24 p.m. And it covers the tweets from the prior 6-day, 13-hour, 38-minute period. And if we scroll down here, we can see this overall, the top 10 influencers. Number 1 was Bernie Sanders. Number 2 was People for Bernie. Number 3 was Nina Turner. Number 4 was _Terry Alexander. Number 5 was Kat Breslin. Number 6 was Oaktown Colsey, etc., 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 so on and so forth. So what they do, they give these top 10 most betweenness centrality, or centrally between accounts. Then they list the top links that are being shared, the top domains for those links. And then you scroll down here, and this is where you get into the top 10s for each group, each subgraph. So this is probably where we will find you. So let's look for Graham. Aha, what have we got here? In group 8, we have got number 1, Chris Hicks 90, number 2, Emma Vigilant, number 3, TYT Politics, number 4, Jimmy Dore, number 5, Graham Elwood, number 6, Lee Camp, number 7, Nico CSFB, number 7, Savage Joy Marie. So, and Pat the Burner's in there as well. And this is group 8. So if we scroll back up to the top and we look at group 8, we can check out what the keywords were for that group. Bernie Brooklyn, Bernie 2020 live, Chris Hicks 90. So they're searching on a specific user there. Rally, crowd, wish, and I can't see what the last final word is there. So these people are tracking anybody who is talking about the Bernie 2020 campaign. And you guys have been pulled into that dragnet.
Wow. For talking about Bernie Sanders and a revolution. That's like, I mean, it's really frightening to think about. We're supposedly in a democracy. I just want everyone to know we're not in a democracy, and this proves it. Like, this is like, oh, Putin and China, they have no rights over there. Are you kidding me? I mean, there's no way China is doing this much to its own citizens the way we are, because they don't spend as much money. We outspend China, I think, 3 or 4 to 1. And again, like this private intelligence shit, half of this is even on the books for the military budget. Like, so this is, I'm on a list with Jimmy and Lee Camp and Pat the Burner and like Nina Turner's on there. I mean, for just saying we want a revolution of Medicare for all and $15 an hour and free college tuition and a Green New Deal. Those are a threat to America's safety and democracy. We're a threat to that. Wanting these things, these principles that are actually in the Bill of Goddamn Rights and the fucking Constitution. And these soulless vampire fucks at these private intelligence companies are a threat to democracy. I want everyone to really be clear on that. We are living in a totalitarian state, the United States. But because we get to go to the mall and we got freedom of choice between smoothies and handbags and what we get to post on Snapchat or TikTok, we think we're free because you get to choose from all these different, cars to buy or whatever. Grubhub will bring you whatever. You think that you're free. You're free as long as you don't ask for anything that is a threat to the ruling elite's money and power. the minute you do that, like I want billionaires to be taxed. Oh, I'm a threat. I just want everyone to be real clear what this is. This is totalitarian, authoritarian. I mean, this is like if Stalin could have done this, had this technology available to him, he would have absolutely used it. And Julian Assange, who they just, again, in this kangaroo court, I mean, they just can't throw him in the gulag like Stalin did. They want to make it appear. They just put these show trials up there to make us all think it's democracy. They have these ridiculous rigged elections and make us think, oh, well, these votes won and this and that. But this is what they're really doing. So did you go to a Bernie Sanders rally? Did you tweet out, oh, wow, I went to a bunch of Bernie Sanders rallies and I met people from all different walks of life. Again, a bridge. He was bridging people together, all ethnicities, all age groups. I saw teenagers all the way up to baby boomers, and everyone in between, gay, straight, black, white. It didn't matter. Everyone was like, damn, we need this. We need this, because labor unifies people. Labor is a bridge because everyone has a job. Everybody needs good benefits and everybody needs to feed their family. So that's why they crush this. I really want everybody, what do I say on the show? Follow the money, connect the dots, get the truth. So I've been targeted. A guy that, just started wearing collared shirts on his show a year ago. For the most part, he used to just wear like black Batman shirts. I'm a threat. A guy in his apartment in front of a TV I got on sale at Target is a big threat. Like this, I got surfing in Costa Rica. So this is astounding. So I guess the question here...
Sorry, can I just interject there for a sec? I just want to say, once again, this all comes down to the motivation, right? Like you can get in a car and you can drive down the street because you want to go to 7-Eleven, or you can get in a car and you can run over a crowd of people. And that's exactly what is happening here with NodeXL. So you can be some high school research student that wants to use NodeXL to find out about something legitimate, or you can be freaking Raytheon wanting to track and stalk and ruin the lives of people who are talking about you online. And I really want to make that distinction, because it's not that the technology itself is inherently evil. It's that the intended use and the motivation of the people who are using it is the evil part. And I just wanted to quickly, now that I've learned that I can share screen on your show, show you this, because this is what I was talking about just before. This is Mark Smith in his talk, Mapping Twitter Social Media Networks with NodeXL Pro, explaining this process of detecting. This is the NodeXL part, detecting, and then deflecting and deterring, with the big needed at the top. This is what we need to do. We need to detect, we need to deflect, and we need to deter. And that is the doctrine of the people who are engaged in this.
Using our tax dollars, I might add too. So it's like, how are we going to pay for?
I think I might have actually failed to share that. Were you able to see
you didn't
it?
share. No, we didn't see it.
I'm so sorry. I will try again. Sorry.
There we go.
Here we go.
Okay.
This is Mark Smith's detect, deflect, and deter, with his big needed at the top.
Big sword.
We need a big freaking sword. We need to detect, we need to deflect, and we need to deter.
This is psychotic.
That's the psychology of the people who are generating these maps. And that one you just saw about Birdie 2020 was, like I said, it was authored by Connected Action, which is the for-profit arm. We have evidence, and which we cite in there, that organization is linked to Hillary Clinton, in particular, and more broadly the DNC. So it's supposition on my part, but highly likely, in my opinion, that is likely to be the source of that particular chart. They are mapping Bernie Sanders' campaign for political organizations who are paying them to generate those charts. But in the case of WikiLeaks, it does seem to tie back to defense contractors or directly the US government.
Yeah. And this is like, I'm just trying to, so I'm sorry, how is North Korea a threat? I'm just trying to sort this out. I'm just this little country that barely has any money. has like one rocket. They're the big threat to us. But our own government, which does all this, and again, I want to make this very clear too. This is using our tax dollars. So whenever you hear like, how are we going to pay for Medicare for all? How are we going to pay for, how are we going to do all this infrastructure? And I want people to understand this on a daily level. When your kid's school, they cut funding for the arts program, or there's no more music, or the sports team gets whatever, all that stuff gets cut. Your roads there's not enough this, they're shutting that down. There's not enough that. Just know we always have money for war and surveilling our own citizenry in the most Orwellian, totalitarian, worse than Stalin. We're worse than Stalin. Make that very clear. America is, this is like what they did in East Germany, listening to people in the 60s. Like we're doing it nonstop. Only now, they can track us on these and social media. They know what our likes, they know way more about us now. They can just go online and track it. And again, it's always, someone, some tech, heads or, whatever, some nerds create some cool technology. And then the intelligence and the community comes in and the military uses it for evil. That's what they will always do. So I just look all the social media platforms. They were all great ideas when they started. Oh, we all get to talk to each other all around the world and form this digital community. And Google's this great search engine. We can search and find anything. And YouTube, anyone can have their own TV show. And then, oh no, they use it to thwart, and they will always come in and ruin it. So my question here is, I'm glad I was 5 and Lee Camp is 6. I got to let him know that I'm just one ahead of him in terms of my ranking of threats. But so what do we do? Right? So how do we combat this? Because we're up against this monolith, heavily funded evil empire, which is the United States. The United States is the evil empire. I live inside of an evil empire. They're way more of a threat to all of our daily. If you're an American, they are a threat. The American government is a threat to your daily life. And it doesn't matter if they have a Republican in there or a Democrat. You think that one party's better than the other. You're deluding yourself, and you're actually playing along with what they want. They want you to pick a team because they can manipulate you. They manipulated the Trump team to go attack the Capitol. They can manipulate the left team to cancel somebody because whatever. They can manipulate you very easily if you subscribe to their thinking. They're obviously, the United States is the biggest threat to the planet. If the Earth goes extinct, it'll be largely the fault of the United States. So how do we battle this? Obviously getting the word out, having you on, you doing this show, doing on all Jimmy's show, and getting the word out and having people share this information is important. But how do we do it? I'm trying not to lose faith, because Edward Snowden reveals it's a bombshell. Nobody, you know what I mean? We keep revealing this stuff, and a lot of people just go, it's too big of, I don't know, it's crazy. Or boy, nuts. Or I didn't. We always knew it. So what are we going to do? So I don't know. I don't want to be too cynical here, but I'm just trying to figure out what we can do, what actions we can take.
I do think that making people aware that this is happening is a first step, and then seeing if there are some types of channels for legal recourse, then that is definitely a second step. Quite often we've seen that there is potential for it is possible to get some legal recourse, even where it's not necessarily possible to achieve policy changes, though policy changes would be nice as well. Ultimately, we need to build systems that exclude these people. For example, Node Excel is not going to be able to operate on Panquake the way that they operate from Twitter. They're not going to be able to pull mass surveillance data feeds out of Panquake and profile users of Panquake the way they're able to do with Twitter. So that's just one example off the top of my head that where we can build systems that protect our privacy and stop us from being surveilled en masse in that way. So they'll still be able to, manually reconstruct records from our blockchain on Panquake, but it will be a very long, painstaking, resource-intensive, and arduous process for them. They won't just be able to press one button and suck everything in like they are from Twitter. And so that, we've got to support the tools that are changing the paradigm. Rockfin is changing the paradigm of YouTube. Panquake is going to change the paradigm of Twitter. support these projects. Panquake needs your help. Panquake is 100% crowdfunded, and people have been doing unreal hours all year long to expedite the development of that project. So supporting alternatives, founding alternatives, coming up with ideas. We've just got to use our ingenuity, basically, what we'd call in New Zealand number 8 wire thinking, number 8 wire ingenuity. You know, maybe all you have is one rock and one stick, but maybe out of that you can invent something new that is gonna revolutionize the farming industry. We've got to use our brains. We've got to come up with new ideas, and we've got to support those that have new ideas. We've also got to get a lot more savvy too around not falling for a lot of this bullshit. I mean, for example, you look at the reporting we're doing. We're reporting on people who have ties to Clinton, people who have ties to CIA, people who have ties to DOD. And right now there's like a little troll army on the #WL Dragnet hashtag talking shit about this journalism project. Well, do you think maybe that's got something to do with this? Like, or there's someone writing some stupid blog post saying some crazy shit about me. You know, people, we've got to get just a bit more savvy and be able to like instantly recognize and discard this stuff and not be affected by it. We've just got to step above it. What is the famous quote, you know, that great people think about ideas and little people think about or talk about people and each other. We need to do a lot more talking about ideas. There's one of our team members saying that they've been dealing with trolls all morning. So you see those troll networks, know where they come from. Those troll networks are the deflect step. So we've got detect, which is node Excel and us all being profiled to be surveilled. And then we've got deflect, which is these troll armies coming in and trying to steal your attention, steal your time, change the flow of the conversation, misdirect you to some other aspect than what someone says trolls are the bedbugs on the internet. That's absolutely true. Exactly. But then you have the deter side, and that's something we're going to have to deal with as well. Right now in this world, there are people making money off of ruining other people's lives. That's what it comes down to, and it's wrong and it's unconscionable. And we need to, in some manner, in some way, begin to hold those people to account. I don't pretend to have all of the answers as to how to do that, but I do think that making people aware of these activities, and also breaking the isolation that they impose upon targets, is another really important factor. So when we interviewed a bunch of different people about their experiences, every single one of them said they felt alone. Every single one of them said, I felt alone in this. I felt alone in this. None of them were alone in this. They were all going through it at the same time. So people need to understand, like, you're not alone. You're not the only one being smeared. You're not the only one being beset by trolls. You're not the only one being targeted. You're not the only one having your life destabilized. In 2016, I made a documentary called Diary of a Person of Interest, which was all about my experiences in New Zealand of being targeted by state agencies that we now know, thanks to an official State Services Commission report, were targeting the movements that I was involved in New Zealand at the behest of our government and our government departments. And in that documentary, there's a whole section about the privatization of surveillance and state surveillance. And in that documentary, I said the for-profit nature of surveillance, the privatization of the functions of state surveillance, means they must have perpetual growth. All businesses in capitalism require growth, right? They require growth and they require churn. Well, to have perpetual growth, if your business is spying, you have to spy on more people. If you get paid per person that you spy on, you want more money next year than last year, you have to spy on more people. You have to target more people. And as the number of targets grows bigger and bigger and bigger with every passing year, the ability of the spies to pretend this isn't happening diminishes. And so that's the good news in this, and that's the process I actually see happening right now. I'm seeing where we're at the tipping point. You know, in years gone by, they could say, oh, this is conspiracy theory. Oh, Susie's just, making it up or whatever. But as more and more and more people are being targeted, yeah, look, there's a brilliant comment. Someone just said that the expanding watch lists are a kind of Ponzi scheme. That is exactly what this is. It really is like the multi-level marketing of the surveillance agencies. Like it really is. And it is very much a Ponzi scheme. And so as the target lists get bigger and bigger and bigger, there will be greater and greater awareness that this is happening. But the scary factor is that if we don't stop it, if we don't make a big freaking noise about it, eventually it will be status quo that every single person in the world is targeted. And
Right.
we saw this with hardware, surveillance hardware. For example, do you remember when there was like just one surveillance camera like in one specific place? Like think back like 25, 30 years ago, there would be at a certain place there would be a camera, and then like it was just the closed circuit TV, and people would have their own little surveillance camera maybe in their store, their 7-Eleven, their whatever, right? And see how it stepped forward, and then there was more cameras, and then there was more cameras, and now there's cameras literally everywhere, and they're all networked and interconnected, and even across borders, where like cameras that are in New Zealand can be monitored by agencies that are in Washington DC now. We have this ubiquitous surveillance network. This is the same thing with this targeted spying. The end game of this targeted spying is that everybody will end up being facing the same punishing measures if they're on the shit list.
Yeah.
And that's a horrible future, and it's one worth fighting against, definitely.
Yeah. Well, Suzie, I really appreciate you taking the time. Do you got time to answer a few questions?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Let's go on over to rockfin.com/Graham Elwood, a great way to support the show. Any tips over there? We will ask the question. This is from Matt S. Matt, Shaving Knuckles for Justice. Thank you for supporting our show. The mass scale censorship seems to affect both sides politically, but doesn't seem to be letting up. What do you think it will take to get true free speech on a mass scale again?
In a mass scale, is in a centralized way, I don't know. I actually think decentralization is key. I think we need to have a whole toolkit of options available to us, and ultimately we've got to make it trendy. Like that's what it comes down to. It needs to be cool to care about this stuff. It needs to be cool to make sure that you're taking every option you can to not be monitored by the government. And conversely, it needs to be uncool to spy on people for a job. What do you do? Oh, I work for a private intelligence company. Oh, that's disgusting. Quit your fucking job. Get a new job. Like this, it needs to be a cultural shift where we reject people whose daily employ is to target and destabilize the lives of other people. Think back in Vietnam War, like that's exactly the type of thing I'm talking about in the anti-Vietnam War movement. It was not freaking cool to admit that you killed Asian babies. That was not cool, and you were not cool if you were part of that. And I think we need to exactly the same thing here. It should not be cool to be contracting to whatever, government agency to stalk and surveil people based on their political opinions. I mean, let's be real, that's some Nazi shit right there. To be going after people for their speech or for their beliefs or for their opinions. You actually don't get to say democracy in the same breath as you say detect, deflect, and deter. I mean, detect, deflect, and deter is literally some Nazi shit. And so you can't be cool. You can't be someone you want to like be around, hang out with, or have in your life if you're engaged in that type of stuff against other human beings. Humanitarianism is cool. Having empathy for other people is cool. Caring about the planet in the future is cool. Trying to not have this planet die in a ball of flames is cool. Working for private intelligence is not cool. It's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah. If you work for private intelligence, quit. Quit.
Yeah,
Get
to
another
literally
job.
take the moral high ground and get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Melissa H. Melissa, thank you for supporting our show. Shave Your Knuckles for Justice at rockfin.com/Graham Elwood. Graham, you should have Suzie on an episode of Government Secrets in a segment, The Privatization of the Totalitarian Deep State. Thanks for all your hard work, Suzie. Thank you, Melissa. We appreciate that. Matt S. said, Shave Your Knuckles for Justice. I promise you, I'm not a deep state deflect troll, Graham. I swear. No, Matt, you ask very good questions.
This stuff isn't fun to talk about. You know, I didn't ever intend to spend my life talking about these things, but at the same time, I can't not talk about them when I see that they're happening. It's unconscionable, you know, to be a part of covering that up.
Mm-hmm.
So.
No, I remember when we first started talking, it was 3 years ago, you were like, you know, Graham, I was a soccer mom in New Zealand. And then they, you know, I just started getting involved in the Occupy movement and saw that the FBI was working with the New Zealand government and breaking the law. And then they started targeting you. When it happens to you, it really wakes you up. And I think that's the thing. I hope this wakes people. I hope you don't have to wait to get targeted before you go, oh man, this is for real. Because you just want to think, oh, it's not happening to me, or maybe the person's exaggerating, or well, whatever. But no, it's happening, and it can happen to anybody who speaks out, even in the slightest ways. Like, I'm not leading some movement. I'm like not at the front of some like rally up the steps of the government building. I'm just a guy online, and they came after me. So Kate, our moderator, thank you, Kate, for supporting our show. This question is for Suzie. Can you say when you are dropping the other 2 articles in the WL Dragnet series and what they are about?
Well, it's interesting given what we were just discussing, because one of the things that pushed me over the edge in New Zealand was when I discovered that New Zealand military agencies were involved in targeting New Zealand permanent residents and citizens, including Kim.com. And that is very similar to the second part that's coming out in WL Dragnet, because that is where the military side of the US military side of this whole social media mass surveillance operation comes to light in a big way. And I can tell you that what we have discovered, the hard evidence we have discovered in the course of that investigative reporting, has completely changed my understanding of the way that the entire world operates and is controlled by the powers that be. It is a paradigm shift. I fully expect this next article to be 10 times bigger than the last one, because the next article isn't just about the WikiLeaks support community. The next article isn't just about people who care about Julian. The next article is about how entire nations are controlled. I won't say any more than that. It's very easy to give it away, but it's really enormous. It's probably the most enormous in scope and significance reporting that I've ever done in the last 10 years. It's huge. It may be out Monday, it may be out Tuesday, it may be out Sunday. It depends. I don't have a fixed publishing schedule for it. But the more, I can tell you, the more that you go and share part 1, and the more people subscribe to part 1, the less we'll feel that we need to spend our time marketing part 1, and we'll move ahead with publishing part 2.
So everybody, if you're just tuning in, my name is Graham Elwood. You're watching The Political Vigilante. We're here with whistleblowing journalist Suzie Dawson, who has just released the first of a several-part series about private intelligence. And we were just asked, when is the next part coming out? You talked a little bit about Julian Assange. How much in these next articles are, well, rather I should ask this, has anything in the last 2 days of developments from the Assange trial going to be added to any of these parts coming out?
I don't think so. It's really unclear what's going to happen in the next steps. I mean, there's a couple of options. One is that this becomes a UK constitutional issue and it goes to the Supreme Court, in which case there'll be a whole 3rd round of case hearings and trials and everything else. Or, thank you, Sean Smith. Or it could be that they refuse it as a constitutional issue. It could go to a European Commission of Human Rights, Court of Human Rights. There's all different types of things that could happen. It's pretty unclear. In terms of that, I would just follow WikiLeaks' main account on Twitter and just see what information they're putting out, because they'll be the best and most reliable source around what's happening with Julian. This article is obviously framed around Julian because the people who we interviewed about having been targeted are being targeted because of their support for Julian. As we know, Julian and WikiLeaks are being targeted by the CIA, are being targeted by actually a variety of US government agencies and intelligence agencies. And this seems very much to be part of a dragnet, the targeting of WikiLeaks supporters writ large. But the technology that's being used to target them, the networks behind that technology, and then the military side of social media mass surveillance is something that's impacting and affecting everybody in the world, and not just WikiLeaks. And that is, as I said before, what the rest of the series really is going to move into evidencing, not just talking about, but actually evidencing with hard documents. We have obtained documents from House Intelligence Committee. We have obtained documents from US defense contractors, and those documents paint a picture that is a step beyond anything we've ever heard of before. And that's what we'll be reporting on.
Well, that is great to know.
I did just see someone asked if I would go back to New Zealand, and if I miss New Zealand. I miss New Zealand a great deal. I miss the physical land of New Zealand. I miss the geography of New Zealand. I grew up on beaches. I lived my life on beaches, and I haven't even seen a beach in 6.5 years, 7 years. So I do miss the land of New Zealand. The Te Whenua, we would say, the land in Māori. I miss, or the motu, the land. I miss the people. I miss the people, he tangata. I miss the people of New Zealand. I miss my whānau, my whānonga, my extended family in New Zealand, my friends, the people I care about, the people I love, and vice versa. I miss my culture very much. I miss my activist movements and the people who stood strong with me. I miss Wahine Toa, my other women warriors who stood behind me in activist movements in New Zealand. I do not for one second think that I would make it through the airport in New Zealand. And that's unfortunate, because I've never committed a crime. I've committed no crime. But in the eyes of the Five Eyes intelligence services, I am some type of, like, God knows what, like, designation they've come up with me. I mean, just as one example, TPPA No Way, which is a hashtag I co-founded in New Zealand, which went #2 worldwide. That movement was called by the New Zealand police a threat to national security. So I guess this is, like, literally, that's what they called it. And all we were trying to do was stop corporations being able to supersede New Zealand law. And they called us a threat to national security for that. So I don't see myself being able to go back to New Zealand anytime soon, because I will be deemed a threat to national security. Me, a mother of 2 kids, who has just tried to educate people. I've done nothing. I've never done any physical, I don't have weapons. I wouldn't know how to use a weapon even if I had one. I'm not a physical danger to anybody. But because of what I say and because of what I write, I can't go home. And I hope that one day I can, very much. But I don't see it coming anytime soon, not while New Zealand is so beholden to the military infrastructure of a foreign nation. And that's exactly the situation at its core.
Yeah, well, that's sad, and it's a sad state of affairs that we're in, that you can't even live in your own country for the last 6 years, and so it shows you why this is so important to get this information out there, and why, it's just awful. I mean, it's just like, it's all this talk about democracy and freedom, and we don't have any of it. It's just a sham. It's a facade. We don't actually have it. If we really had democracy,
we are the people fighting for democracy.
Yeah.
those of us who want everyone to have a voice and to be unimpeded and, to be able to... There isn't a damn thing I've ever fought for that isn't written in the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights. Like, there isn't a single thing I've ever fought for that isn't actually enshrined in the Bill of Rights. We are the ones who are actually fighting to restore the promise of democracy. And if we hadn't been promised democracy, we might not have known any different to want to fight for it. But, we are the ones holding the democratic values. That's what it comes down to. And the people who we are talking about and the people who we are educating other people about, these agencies, they're the ones that are trampling on democracy every single day. They've established a network of control and mechanisms of control, utilizing technology for the purpose of control that is in total violation to democratic principles. And all of this targeting that they're doing is a violation of democratic principles. They have no right to utter the word democracy. None.
No, it's the least democratic thing I've ever seen. It's just, it's pretty awful. Well, Suzie, I know it's getting late there and you've been working crazy this last week. So I really appreciate you taking the time to explain all of this to us and to answer questions. It was great. It's always great to see you. Tell everybody there I said hello, and we'll have you back on the show when you drop more articles.
Okay, cool. And yeah, give me another week and we'll be back with a big story. Thank you all so much for supporting us. Please, if you want social media freedom, go to panquake.com, donate, but more importantly, tell everybody about it and help fortify my team to get this project finished. We actually have another Panquake delivery meeting tomorrow night, so there'll be more updates on the development progress then. And if you want to be on top of this series of articles that we're putting out, go to talkliberation.com. Thank you for supporting us relentlessly, Graham. You're awesome.
All right, Suzie. Thank you. And thank you to everybody at your team over there. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. We are still in our 9th month of demonetization from YouTube. So support what we're doing at patreon.com/Graham Elwood or rockfin.com/Graham Elwood, which is a blockchain cryptocurrency platform. It's free to sign up, and there's a premium level at $10 a month. And for that, you get everybody on the platform's premium content. Myself, Lee Camp, Ron Placone, Jimmy Dore, Whitney Webb, Kim Iverson, Abby Martin, and many, many others. You can also support what we're doing at Venmo at Graham-Elwood and go to GrahamElwood.com. We have a PayPal button and a PO box. I also have crypto wallets, which are all in the show notes. Thanks for supporting what we do.